All right, guys, so we will get started. I recognise this is a bit of a weird setup. So this is your information session in orientation week for your Bachelor of Medical Science. As I mentioned, I was coming into the room, I had this terrible dream last night that I actually got in here and nobody was medical science and you're all underwater basket weaving, and then I had to do a random presentation on that. So I'm glad that you all are medical science. We've got a bunch of people face-to-face in the room. Actually, I've just turned my camera on, so hopefully those of you who are at home can actually see me as well. So if you are if you're in the room, what you can actually see that we've got going on is we've got a bunch of people who are joining online as well. And throughout this presentation, if you have a question at any stage, if you're in the room, feel free to chuck your hand in the air and just yell it out, because I guarantee someone else will have that question too. And if you are, I guess, watching virtually, attending real time, we actually have our moderator here, Michael Sydney, and he's hanging out on the chat. So feel free to type a question into the chat if you have it, and Mike will actually make sure that we read that out loud and we get that answered for you as well. My name's Hilary Coleman, so I am a program director here in the School of Science, and basically what that means is I have some academic oversight over your course, your progression throughout your course, so the units that you take, the things that you do in those units, all those kinds of things. And I can give you some advice on where you want your course and your study to take you. I can help you out with questions about the units that you're taking. If you have trouble with anything at any stage, I can give you some advice. And we've also got a big team of people who can help you with that. So it's not just me, you've actually got plenty of support. But we also have Michael Sydney here. So he's our first year science student coordinator, as well as our moderator and keeping me under control with IT. Did you want to introduce yourself, Michael?
Yeah, sure, I'm here. So hi, my name's Michael. So I'm the Assistant Program Director for Science. I'm also the first year Science Student Coordinator. So basically you'll see me a lot in your first year, and I'm here to really help you transition into university. University can be a little bit tricky to adjust to, particularly if you haven't done studies like this before, and there's a whole wealth of support that the university offers to you guys as students. Universities are kind of like their own world, and you'll realise that there's a lot of resources out there for you to take full advantage of in order for you guys to succeed at your best during your studies. So I'm here to help you do that, but you'll also see me here in a teaching capacity. So you'll see me in professional orientation, one of your core first year units, and you might also see me in biological concepts as well. So yeah, I'll see you around throughout the semester and this year in particular.
Cool, thanks Michael. All right, so just jumping into this, obviously this session is being recorded, and for those of you who are typing into the chat, just be aware of that as well, please. It is going to be a bit of a download of information, but there's not going to be a quiz at the end that I test you on to allow you to do your first week of study. Essentially, what we're trying to do is make sure that this is a resource for you where you can go so that you know who to ask for help along the way when you have some questions. So the PowerPoint slides will be uploaded. They also have a heap of hyperlinks in them to take you to places that you need to go. And also this talk will be uploaded as well. All right, so this is our medical science course, Bachelor of Medical Science. You'll see me as your program director. You'll also be sick of me though, because you'll probably see me in chemistry. You might see me around in professional orientation maybe at some point, and you might be really unfortunate to have me in some physics workshops. So you definitely are not going to be able to get through your degree without talking to me, apologies. But what we're going to do in this session, first of all, is have an acknowledgement to country. So the University of Canberra acknowledges the Ngunnawal people, traditional custodians of the lands where Bruce campus is situated. And obviously I'd extend that to any of the traditional custodians of the land where some of our people who are attending virtually would be as well. In terms of this talk, this is going to be an overview. So where does your course sit in terms of the university? Who are the people that you're going to be coming into contact with? And where do you need to go for help at any stage? We have a welcome from our Executive Dean, Janine, who you'll actually see, Janine Deacon, you might see around the university, but also potentially in some of your units. She's actually recorded a welcome video, which we'll put up on our Canvas page for you to see, and there'll be a photograph of her coming up next. But please do say hello if you see her around the place. She's just socially distancing today, I guess, as we all are. Who am I? So I am a lecturer and a program director. I look after you guys in medical science, but also our biomedical science students. and you can best get in touch with me by that email address that you can see there. Actually, Tamzin, I guess you're in the background there as well online. So Tamzin Kelly is our Associate Dean of Education. Tamzin, did you want to say hello at this stage? I know you're in and out of a few different things. Your mic might not be working. Technology issues, no worries. So there will be a slide coming up where we'll talk to you about who Tamzin is already. Yeah, irony. At least we're in the School of Science and not the ITS school. That would be even more ironic, so that's okay. So as I said, I look after a couple of different courses. One of the things I've been really fortunate in is that I've had a really convoluted pathway into doing this job. I really love this job. I love teaching, particularly chemistry, and I really love interacting with students. But it was really difficult for me to get, well, not difficult, but I kind of had this pathway that was really unexpected. So I've got a PhD in research chemistry. I've worked for the government for a number of years. I have an education degree and I've been teaching full-time for a number of years as well. So if one of the questions you have is, Hilary, I'm not sure what I should be doing with my study or where I should be going, don't worry, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to not be sure about, and there are still plenty of options for you once you've completed your study. Sometimes that means completing your study and then finding something new or realising where your transferable skills are. Sometimes it might be that you want to have a conversation to say, actually, I think this course isn't for me. What other options are there? So don't worry, totally normal if that's the case. All right, so a bit of structure, because I mean, there's all this new terminology when you show up at university, like what's a faculty, what's a school, what's a unit, what's a major, what's a course, what's a program, what's a degree. I still get confused with those, even though probably technically it's my job to know the answer to those questions. So your course, your Bachelor of Biomedical Science, it's actually a new course. How many of you knew that this course is new starting this year? A couple of you? Yeah, okay, yep. So we'll talk about the specifics of your course coming up. But your course sits within what's called the School of Science. And the School of Science actually sits within the Faculty of Science and Technology. So you will see students from other science courses in some of your units and sometimes from IT, which is the other part of our faculty. You might see students from other faculties as well, such as health. But here we have some of the people who are involved. So we've got Janine Deacon, who's our Executive Dean of Science and Technology, so of the whole faculty. You saw some comments up there before from Associate Professor Tamzin Kelly, who's our Associate Dean of Education. And we also have our Head of the School of Science, Professor Tariq Azaz. I actually just saw him, he stuck his head in the room just before. So he is around. Probably these people that I've just mentioned you might not be dealing with in that capacity, but you will actually see them in some of your units, depending on which units you're studying. So we're really fortunate here, I think, in UC where some of these people who have these positions are actually really heavily involved in the teaching and research that's taking place in our faculty. In our School of Science, we've got 2 program directors, so that's myself and also Adrian Dustin. So if you're interested in anything environmental, you might end up chatting to him. And of course, we have Michael here, who is our first year science student coordinator, but he's also an assistant program director. So anything that you might come and chat to me about, Michael can also potentially help you out with. Oh, did Tamzin just have a comment there?
Yeah, she's just saying that you can still say hello in the corridors. So
oh yes, please do. That comment of mine was not that you should ignore these people. If you see them, please definitely say hello. And in fact, Tamzin and I were just exchanging Wordle scores before. So if you play Wordle, definitely call Tamzin and talk to her about what today's word is. In terms of any communication that you want to have though, the email address that you can see on the board is your best place for a point of call. Essentially, there's a lot of people's names listed, and so that first email address, that actually goes to our faculty's education team. And if you have a question that's specific about your study, they can actually tell you which person you need to go to. So it's a bit of a triage system for us, which essentially just means you get answers to your questions and help sooner rather than later. Whereas if you fire off a specific email to a specific person, it might be that they can't help you and it just takes you a while to get to where you need to go. All right, so where do you go if you need logistical help or administrative help? So how many of you, this is your first time studying at university? Yeah, it's probably going to be quite a few of you. Yep. So you might have heaps of questions like, how do I self-enroll? How do I allocate into my units? How do I get a student ID number and a student ID card and a password? I have all kinds of IT questions, all that kind of thing. The Student Centre or Student Central is where you go for any of those logistics or admin issues, including things like timetabling. And that's over in Building 1, which is straight across that way. Have you been to Building 1 already? Yeah, a few of you, great. I highly recommend make sure sometime before week 1 you go and check it out. You'll actually need to go and get your student card from there. So it is somewhere that you'll need to go. You must have a student card with your student number on it. They're also a really good first point of call. There's heaps of information in this talk that we're giving you. If you are not sure where to go for help, the Student Centre or Student Central will be able to tell you where to go. So worst comes to worst, if you literally forget every other thing from this talk today, if you head over to Student Central, they will be able to help you out with any of your needs. All right, so you know where to go if you're getting administrative or logistical help, but what if you actually want some information about the course that you're studying, about the Bachelor of Medical Science? So we have what's called the digital handbook. So this is essentially a handbook that's online that shows you all of the units within all of the courses that we run here at the University of Canberra. How many of you have been on there? And I'm guessing most of you had a look when you're actually deciding what you wanted to study as your Bachelor of Medical Science. Has anyone been on there already and seen what all the units are, what the structure of the course is? Awesome, excellent. Yep, excellent. That's really, really good to hear. So pretty well, if you haven't done that, you want to make sure that you do that sooner rather than later. There's so much information on that digital handbook. You can currently see mapped out for you your whole course of study, every single unit you need to take, what semester they're all available in, what all of their prerequisites are, all of that kind of thing. And I'm a firm believer that you guys are going to be the best architects of the kind of study you want and the kind of progression that you want and what you want to do afterwards. So when we talk about have course advice coming up, obviously myself and as a big team of people, we're definitely here to help you with course advice. So we'd always suggest that you have a look through this digital handbook first, because it's going to allow you to figure out what you really want to do, what your options are, even for things like studying part-time or full-time, looking at what's involved in your units, all that kind of thing. That information is actually all freely available for you already. I also highly recommend it because oftentimes we find, we want things to be as flexible as possible for students, and you might have a question that you really want answered at 9:30 at night on a Saturday because you've got carers responsibilities and you're working part-time and that's when you're seeking the information. But unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be sitting up on my computer. I might be sitting up on my computer doing work, but I would not expect you guys to be. So the point of that is we want to put the information somewhere where if that's where you want to access it straight away, you actually can get access to it there, and that's a really good place to find that information. One of the other things that's in this digital handbook is what we actually refer to as unit outlines. Has anyone seen a unit outline already? They're really long, technically worded, dry documents. It's a bit sad, but we make them that way because basically that's the definitive place for you to go that tells you everything you need to know to be successful in that unit. So I highly recommend having a look at those, especially for your units coming up too, because you'll actually be able to see where you're going. All right, if you do happen to need course advice, so you've had a look at the digital handbook, you've seen what your study pattern is going to look like, you know what units are coming up, you know what prereqs you need, all that kind of thing. If you still would like some advice, that email address there, again, to our education team is the best place to go at the start. They can also give you help in terms of, let's say you think, coming up, I've got this work opportunity, I'm going to need to go part-time for a semester or a year or something like that, or I need to take a year off or whatever it happens to be. They can help you plan out and map out your study around those needs. If there's anyone too, like you might get into a unit and think, this unit's really not for me, or I'm going to struggle to study 4 units this semester or whatever it happens to be, they can also help you out with some of that advice. The Bachelor of Medical Science is an interesting one. Actually, every single one of your units has already been chosen for you. So some of our other courses, you get some open electives where you get to decide, but every single unit is a required unit in your course. So if you're finding a unit challenging or you're finding your circumstances a bit difficult, I actually highly recommend reaching out to our education team sooner rather than later, because any unit you're doing is actually one that's necessary for you to do. So any support we can give you at the start is going to be good. Oh, actually, I'm just going to go back one. There's another URL that you can see at the bottom here. So this is to a Canvas page. How many of you have been in Canvas already? Yeah, great, awesome. I feel like I don't need to be here. This is really good. Does one of you want to come and give the talk? Probably you could. Obviously, the people who are at home watching virtually, you're all in Canvas, so well done. This is actually our School of Science's Canvas page that gives course advice and information, and it's really handy. Essentially, you can go there, there's frequently asked questions, and there are study patterns already mapped out for you. So if you want to see what your study plan looks like and you just want to download it and have it for yourself, that information is freely available already on that website, including a bunch of questions or answers to questions that we know most students have. So again, it might feel like we're deluging you with information, and there's certainly no requirement that you're going to be across all of this information right now. We're just trying to make it such that when you need an answer, actually you can get it straight away without having to chase somebody up. If you do end up having to communicate with us though, one thing that is completely necessary is that you use your UC email address. And that has that form that you can see there with all of those X's. Obviously, instead of X's, you'll have your own unique student ID number. So if you're not sure what it is or how to get one, which building do you need to go to? Yeah, Student Central building one, excellent, yep. I feel like I'm like bashing you over the head with this information, but they will help you in building one. The reason we do this, and sometimes students find it really frustrating, you'll email us something really critically important and you get a return email from your convener. I teach in a number of units, I'm a convener, and I have to say, I'm really sorry, please can you email me back from your student account? And it seems really frustrating, but the reason we do this is to preserve your confidentiality. So you might have to email your convener because you are going to have trouble putting in an assessment task on time because you've had some medical or health emergency. Or you might be contacting your convener about a result that you've received and you want to get some advice. Your convener can't reply because they can't tell that it's you. And they don't want to give information about your personal life or your results to someone who's not you. So we need to make sure that you're emailing us from your student account. The other thing I say with this with Canvas, it's really funny. So if you're in a unit and there's 30 students, Canvas actually only lists the student's first name. And in fact, actually, when you guys went into Canvas, I don't know how this works. Could you put in a preferred name on Canvas? Anyone know? No, so it just must be the name when you've enrolled in. Either way, we can only see the first name. So if you've got a small unit, it's probably okay. Your convener is going to know who you are. But last year, I ran a unit with 470 students in it. And somebody kept messaging me through Canvas, and there were 5 students in the unit with that same name. And I just couldn't help the person because I couldn't work out who they were. So please, 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 email is the best form of communication. When you go into the Canvas sites from your units, your conveners might tell you their preferred way for you to get in touch with them. And that's absolutely fine, just follow whatever their direction is. But messaging through Canvas is just something that we can't help you with because we can't tell who you are. All right, so what does Canvas look like? So this is what Canvas looks like to me when I log in. Essentially, you'll see a little tile for any one of the units that you're enrolled in. So any unit that you have allocated yourself into and that you're enrolled in should automatically show up on your Canvas homepage. And any unit that you study throughout your whole course at UC will have a Canvas page. And that Canvas page or Canvas site is where all of the information will be disseminated to you. So your convener will communicate with you through Canvas through announcements. They will have all of the due dates for your assessments in that Canvas page, which essentially means your calendar. Your Canvas calendar is already populated for you. You should be able to see all your due dates already in Canvas for your first semester worth of units. It's also where, generally speaking, all the assessment tasks are submitted, or most of them, depending on the nature of them. So if you're not sure about Canvas, please make sure that you ask us or that you have a look. You also see the School of Science information site there. So essentially that site will get bigger and bigger the more units you enroll in and do. The other really handy thing about Canvas is you can set it up so that if, for example, your convener puts an announcement in their Canvas page, say for physics, that it will email you that announcement. And it's a good idea to do that. Certainly my expectation as a convener is that my students will be checking the Canvas page at least once a day or during weekdays, and also be checking their email once a day. And it just really helps us out, particularly now in COVID where we're doing things a lot more flexibly and in a hybrid way. We can't always guarantee that we will see all of the students to give you information. So the Canvas page, if we can agree that everybody's checking it, then we know that you have that information. So please make sure that you have access and ask us if you don't. All right, so what was that School of Science course advice and information site that I mentioned that all of you should be in? You don't have to enrol yourself in these sites. They should automatically be there. It's a super, super useful Canvas site. So obviously you'll have your units that will be useful in and of themselves, but this general course advice site is super useful. You'll see this on the homepage. It's got information about general study plans that you can access right now. It's got frequently asked questions. It's got some links to some extra study skills resources that we have. It's got some incredibly embarrassing videos for myself and the other program director welcoming. Yours isn't embarrassing, Michael. Yours is good, I think.
Is it? I think
Yeah.
he's getting talked to Vicky about that.
Okay, she made you look good. But again, announcements in there. It's also got some information. So at some point during your study, you guys will end up doing a professional placement. So you'll go into a workplace and you will actually be embedded with the people working there. You have a lot of ownership over that. So you actually get to approach places and employers where you think you'll get the most benefit and that you would like to work. But obviously that means some lead up work. We can't, I guess, just bowl up. It should be good if we could just bowl up to a workplace and start working there, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. So there's also some really great information in that Canvas site for how to get started on that stuff. And we'll see you in professional orientation where we get the ball rolling on some of these things. All right, so one of the things I just mentioned that Canvas site gives you information about is something that we call study skills. And it's really interesting. I think sometimes students think that study skills, for example, we might have some things like help with report and essay writing. We might have help with citation management, so making sure that you're referencing things correctly. It might be English language skills if you're coming from a background of English as an additional language or dialect. There's all kinds of things. And some people, I think they even have strategies for procrastination. I don't know about you guys. How many of you procrastinate a lot? I definitely do. Yeah, I need a deadline to make sure I get things done. So there's heaps of that study skills can help you out with essentially. And I would think about them as a coach that you have access to rather than something that you only access if things are not going well. And in fact, in some of your units, your convener might say, as part of your study in this unit, you are going to access this aspect of study skills. And the fact of the matter is, with your fees that you're paying, you are actually paying for this service already. So it really is an expectation that at any point where you think, I'd like to get better at this thing, I'm going to go and access these supports, essentially. And all of their information is up there as well as in your Canvas pages. And again, you'll have access to this at the end. With these study skills and supports that we provide here at UC, it's probably the case that over the course of your whole study, at some point you will need different ones of them. But the one that you're most likely to see in your first year is this one in the middle called Peer Assisted Learning Sessions, or PALS. In most of your core units, so things like physics coming up, is everybody enrolled in physics first semester? Yeah, great, good to hear. So things like physics, biological concepts, if you're doing some chemical concepts in second semester, these things have what we call PALS students or PALS leaders in them. And these PALS leaders are students who in the last year or two have completed a really similar unit to yours and done really well at it. And doing really well at it can mean that they are really across the content, they're really confident with it, but it probably also means they've kind of figured out their study habits. They know how to do university, basically. So you'll actually see them embedded in some of your unit's learning activities, but they also publish a timetable where you can see them outside of those hours to get help for those subjects. So I'm running a chemistry unit this semester. I have PALS students in some of my actual workshops that we're delivering, but then they also have given me a timetable when students can actually see them specifically for chemistry help. And the other thing you might like, I mean, hopefully Michael and I do not look like, I don't know, really scary people who you wouldn't want to come and talk to, but we also recognise that sometimes you might just not want to talk to your convener and just ask some questions to someone who's a similar student to you. So that's a really good way to get access to these people and ask some questions. The other one that's on here that's probably really important to point out straight away is a maths and stats help, MASH. So again, I think sometimes students see this and think, this is a scary thing, this is like a mob of statisticians wandering around the university trying to pounce on you and help you with maths questions. But really, again, they're just a resource that's there Obviously, you guys are studying a science course, which is going to have some maths and stats in it. So if you feel like there's some help that you need or just some extra questions that you want to ask, they're a service that's there all the time. And once again, they actually publish a timetable so that pretty well any student can fit going in to see them in their timetable every week if you would like to. The last thing I'll point out here is the academic integrity module, way over on the right-hand column there. So as part of some of your units in your study, it's actually going to be a requirement that you undertake this. I think the first one of those is going to be professional orientation. So you guys will actually you'll have to do this module. It's essentially forms part of us becoming professional scientists. So just ensuring that we're talking about things like how we collected our data, what results do we have, what do we understand about them. It fits into that, but also more broadly when we're studying and producing work, how are we maintaining our academic integrity around that. So not for you to do right this second, but just be aware there are some things like this that will be requirements in your courses, and of course you'll be given access to them when you need to. A couple of other things that maybe don't fit under any of those things that we've mentioned. So we've also got some health and wellbeing services that you can access here on campus. I won't spend too much time touching on these other than pointing out, I guess, medical and counselling there. So for example, you might find that you've had your booster shot at some point and it just wipes you out for a day and you couldn't come into campus and you had an assessment that was due. Something like that is a completely reasonable reason to not be able to submit an assessment. But what we ask when you're asking for extensions for things is that you attach a medical certificate if it was a health issue. And so medical and counselling, that's a place that you could go to see a GP for a medical certificate, but obviously for any other reason if you're ill. And they also have counselling services there, including a psychologist. So we have, I guess, hopefully both of those needs met. There are also finally some specialised services. So these are ones that you might get through your whole course and never have worried about, or they might be ones where you think, actually, I'm going to see what all of these different services can offer me. So it's up to you to kind of tailor how you'd like to use these. We have an international student service there in the student centre, so welcome back to any of our international students who are coming back. That's excellent. One thing I'll highlight there too is inclusion in the middle there. So inclusion is a team and a service that's run through the Student Centre or Student Central in Building 1. And essentially, if you're a student who might have some kind of physical difficulty or learning difficulty, for example, there might be some things that we can do, the conveners of your units can do, to make those units more accessible for you, essentially. So, for example, if you're a student who perhaps has a hearing impairment, what you would go and do is have a conversation with one of the inclusion team about the nature of that and what things might help you. And then that inclusion team would confidentially write up some things that they could give to your convener to say, hey convener, this student is in your unit and they need this, this and this as part of these assessment tasks or as part of these activities. And I can't stress enough, all those things are always confidential. So if you don't want your conveners to know about the nature of the things that you're dealing with, that's absolutely fine. You do have that conversation with inclusion so they can best help you work out what strategies might help you. And then all that happens is your convener gets told what things they need to do. It is always best if that's an ongoing conversation with your convener, because they oftentimes might have loads and loads of students in front of them and they might not know who you are. But if you are having a chat with them about the things that you would like to have done and you've seen inclusion, then that's something that your convener will definitely action for you. So that's there for you. What I recommend is if you think that you might be in that boat, definitely have a chat to them from the start, because as soon as that, we call it a reasonable adjustment plan, as soon as that plan is in place, your convener can start helping you. Before that plan is in place, it's a bit harder for your convener to action those things. We also have this great UC student mentor program. So let's say you've accessed all of the rest of that support and you think, oh, I just want somebody I can ask all my, what I think are silly questions to. How do I go about doing that? We have a mentor program, so this matches you up one-on-one with an existing student. And as you can kind of imagine, somebody wouldn't sign up to be a mentor unless they were really keen to help you out. So you can access this as well. And again, the information will be available to you there. All right, so some other resources that might be useful. So one of these is the Student Resource Centre. We also have the library. How many of you have been into Building 8 in the library so far? Yeah, a few of you, great. Yep, so the library is kind of a hub where you can do all kinds of things, including study. But I really like the Student Resource Centre. Actually, heaps of science students use the Student Resource Centre. It's in Building 6. It's got breakout spaces for you. There's spaces to do group work. There's heaps and heaps of science textbooks in there as well. So there's access to lots of resources there. The other great thing about the Student Resource is that's where the PALS sessions are run out of. So if you do want to access that support where you're asking some questions about PALS leaders, that's where they'll be found in that building. When I first arrived here, I tried to find the Student Resource Centre, and I swear I started right next to that sign that you can see in that first picture, did not see the sign, spent 45 minutes wandering around the building like it was Narnia or something, and then came out at the end and realised the sign was next to me. So we'll go on a tour after this talk, and if you're interested, we'll make sure we take you through that building, and then you'll know exactly where it is. We also have some great student societies, so you can actually join up to any society you want to. There's just a handful that are listed on the board here, and please do that. All the societies run all kinds of great things, quiz nights, catch-ups. These ones happen to be the science-focused ones, but there are heaps of other societies outside of that, so join whatever you're interested in. We do have a UC Biomedical and Medical Science Society, and they actually have, I think they have a market stall open a week on Tuesday, so you can go by and have a chat to them. They've obviously got a big social media presence, so that would be a way for you to meet other students who are studying similar things to you but might be a bit progressed in their studies. So another good way to get to know some people. I can see a few people are writing some details down. Shall I pause for a sec so you can do that? Okay, all good. Okay. All right, so how do you build your course? Now this is actually really interesting for you guys, because I was going to say you have less choice, which is not that interesting, but you have less choice because we've really focused this course for you and given you all of the depth that you really need to be successful in the career that you're heading out for. So in terms of the structure of your course, we do have some principal dates. You can actually find this all on the website, and the blue bits here are linked in URLs if you want to actually access this later on. Just in terms of how the semesters work, you can see semester 1 is listed there. We start in week 1 next week. They're 13 weeks long. But the thing to remember is that the semesters actually have a 2-week exam period on the end. Now, depending on what units you're taking, you probably actually won't have that many, traditional exams in that exam period anymore. More so, we're moving away in some cases to bigger projects and assignments, but they still tend to be due after the end of the semester in that exam period. So if you're having a look at this and thinking, sweet, I can go and book a holiday straight after week 13, please rethink that, because being on holiday is not going to be an acceptable reason to need an extension for something, essentially. So just look really carefully when the exam periods are and recognise that you might have some assignments that are due then. Some of our units also have group presentations in that time. So it's kind of the exam week / the week when your final assessment tasks could be scheduled. All right. So what is a unit? Just a bit of terminology. Actually, does anyone know what that image is on the screen? Okay, if not. So these are the SI units. So every unit that you deal with throughout any of your science or any other units, I guess. We're talking about unit subjects, so you understand what you're doing, but these are our SI units for any measurements that you would make. Does anyone recognise some of those? Probably some of them. Which is officially the best one? Michael's laughing at me. Okay, maybe that's a little bit subjective. Moles is clearly the best one if you're studying chemistry. I'm happy to have a debate with you. It can be either. They're all pretty good, but I'm a fan of them all. Okay, what's a unit in terms of the actual subjects that you're studying? So when we refer to a unit, and the reason why we would go through this is if you need some course advice or if you're talking to your conveners, we will all be using this language. So it's important to make sure that you're clear on what it is too. A unit is like one of the specific subjects that you study. So you will all be studying biological concepts, you will be studying professional orientation. Usually they're a semester long, and usually they're worth what we call 3 credit points. And the credit points just help us kind of weight your units, know what volume of learning was in them. They also have a unique identifying code. So 11722, that is biological concepts, and 11718 is professional orientation. You might think, why do I need to bother with these numbers? You don't necessarily, but they are unique. And when you get course advice, we will use those numbers. And it's actually even more important for you guys right now, I would say, because as we mentioned before, this is a new course that you're doing. So you might actually see similarly named units from our old courses that are in Teach Out at the moment. But you guys have really specific units that you are required to take as part of your course. So we don't want you to accidentally enroll yourself in some other unit that happens to be available still for somebody else and not do the units that are really built into the new course that we've designed for you. So you should be fine with it essentially because all the information we provide to you has those codes. But if you just want to check at any stage, they are available there for you and it is the unique code. So you can see exactly what unit we're talking about. What are majors and minors? So minors we actually don't need to worry about in your course. Some universities have minors. A lot of students get through their courses without getting a minor. But a major is a set of related units that we've built for you that usually have a progression with a sort of theme behind them. So you might hear that people, previously you might do a major in genetics or a major in forensic science or a major in environmental something or other, basket weaving, whatever it happens to be. So it really is just a series of units that your university has designed specifically to say this person has this skill set, they've focused in this area. And in your course, it's actually highly unusual. Most students actually come out with only 2 majors and then they can use the rest of their remaining units to kind of dabble in some other areas. You guys are going to come out with 3 majors because every single one of your units was built into this really specialised area so that when you come out, you have those extra skills, if you like. So you'll end up with 3 majors. And those have been designed into your course. You don't need to kind of worry about it. You don't need to think about what you're going to do. Those things are already designed for you. Just a bit of a tip on workload, just to make sure that everybody is on the same page. 1 unit that we said is worth 3 credit points. The expectation is that if they've been designed such that there's about 150 hours work across the whole semester. So week 1 to 13 is the content is being presented, and then weeks 14 and 15 is when you might have some assessment tasks. So it's effectively 10 hours a week per unit or per subject that you're studying. Just notice though too that usually, so if you're studying full time in any semester, you'd take 4 of those units. So 4 lots of 150 hours over 15 weeks, that actually adds up to more than a full-time job. So if you're sitting either at home or here in the room and you're thinking, oh, I was planning on working full-time and also studying this course at the same time, that's something you might want to come have a discussion with us about. I only say for some people it's absolutely fine to work part-time and study full-time, but we don't like it to become a surprise to any students that that's the volume of work required. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not sure I can fit these things in, I might like to go part-time or anything like that, definitely have a chat to our education team and we can discuss some of those things. Certainly it is completely reasonable to go part-time if you need to. All right, so a couple of pointers about our Faculty of Science and Technology. I guess the science is at the top because, of course, if you're a scientist, what you do is look really carefully at colourful liquid, not wearing your safety glasses. I've never studied an IT subject, but I do assume that they constantly wear virtual reality glasses, but we'll see. Is anyone taking an IT unit, but you won't be. But you might see some of those students around. The way your course works is within the School of Science is you will actually be interacting obviously with each other a heap because you'll all be taking the same units for the whole of your study. But you will also see some environmental science students in some of your core units, and you might see some forensic studies students who are actually finishing up their study at the moment. So it's really nice. You'll get to know each other really well, but you will see some students from studying other courses within our school, which will be great. All right, so how does your specific course work if that's the case? And we'll just finish off with this couple of slides and then we'll have a tour. So you've got heaps of options when you finish your course. And what I rather recommend is some of you may have chosen this course because you already know exactly what you want to do at the end, and that's great. Some of you might want to decide as you're going through. We're really, really lucky with these units in that you are oftentimes working with people who are researchers in the field. So please make sure you actually talk to them about what research they're doing, their pathways. They might have opportunities for postgraduate studies, so you might want to do honours with some of these people. And because you actually get to see them in your units, you can have that conversation with them as you go. So it's a great opportunity for that. If you're interested in doing the GAMSAT, this is a really good course for that, but there are heaps of other options as well. And feel free to have a chat to us as you go through if you're not sure. We're also really lucky with these courses. As I said, we've got researchers who are currently here and teaching you. You'll also notice in a lot of your units that you'll have experts from outside of UC coming in for certain lectures and activities, so you get exposed to a whole range of people. One of the other things that we're really proud of with these units is our work integrated learning. So as I mentioned, as part of your study, you will have to go and do a placement. And it might sound a bit daunting, but you see an amazing track record with graduate employment and graduate salaries. And essentially this is one of the reasons why, because you can't finish your course here without getting that wealth of experience from actually spending some time in a workplace. And even if the worst thing that happens is you realise that specific workplace is not for you, that's actually much more valuable experience for you than getting a job afterwards and then realising that that job is not for you. So all in all, we find that our students really find this worthwhile. All right, what does your course look like? So you're doing the Bachelor of Medical Science, and as I mentioned, it has 3 majors in it. So one of them is the core major, and that's actually highlighted in blue there. That core major, each major is made of 8 units altogether. That core major has some foundation units in it. So those are the units that you're taking to make sure that the content is there for you. So we've got some biology, some physics, some chemistry, and some data analysis skills. That's all in your first year. And then later on in the years, we have another 4 units that make up the professional side. So those are the units where you'll be getting some of those soft skills that help you really go out and be a professional in a science workplace, including things like doing a placement as you go, and then collecting some evidence so that by the end, you're actually ready to go and apply for the jobs that you really want to apply for. So that's your core major, and every science student does that. So that's where you'll see your environmental science students, that's where you will see some biomedical science students, that's where you might see some forensics students or some general science students. Your other 2 majors, though, are specific to you guys. And once again, they're colour-coded, so it might seem a bit odd though, but we've got these 2 different specialist majors. And as you can see, we've put together a series of 8 units for both, which really say you've got in-depth expert knowledge in these 2 areas. Now, all of these are required. So there are no units that are listed above that you shouldn't be doing. You need to do all of them. A really massive upside to that is it's very clear what your study pattern is because you have them all listed there. One downside, well, not necessarily a downside, but one thing I guess to keep aware of, as I mentioned before, if you're finding a unit challenging at any stage, then you want to come and talk to us early so we can figure some options out for you because they are all required units under your course. One little thing I'll note before we finish up, chemical concepts there, you can see in semester 2 in your first year, that has some assumed knowledge. So we're assuming that you have some kind of background in chemistry. There is actually a unit that you could take in winter term that we can help catch you up if you feel like you are not feeling that confident. And if that's you, I highly recommend you getting in touch with our education team so we can give you some information as to how to go about doing that. Because obviously we don't want to overload you or anything like that. All right, so we'll finish up with this slide. As we said, in the first instance, if you have a question, please head to our Device Canvas page because 9 times out of 10 your question will be answered there. We've got our digital handbook online for you to look up all the information that you could ever want about our subjects or our units. And then SciTech student inquiries, that's the email if you have specific course questions. If the education team can help you out straight away, they will. If they can't because they need to escalate it because it's a bit more of a sticky question or requires like an academic call, they'll escalate that to me as your program director. Or you might end up going to see Tariq as our head of school. But we'll finish up there so we can head for a tour. I'm really sorry, virtual room guys, I probably can't carry my computer around in front of me to go on the tour. So thank you so much for those of you who are in the room. I hope that was helpful. Michael might stick around for a bit to answer some questions for you in the room if you have them. But otherwise you can also contact me. And then the guys who are here in person will probably head off if you would like to see some of the rooms and labs that you will be working in. And I'll also stick around if you've got some specific questions. But otherwise, welcome to UC. Looking forward to meeting you guys on your study.